The topics of today are becoming pretty popular of dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic, debilitating, autoimmune. And that's what we're talking about with the brain and being able to clear the glial cells of the brain. It turns out the major glymphatic drainage for the body is the respiratory diaphragm. So being able to breathe deeply is a big part of being able to clear your brain. Who knew, right? So I've been doing cranial work for the past 40 years, and there's a rhythm in the body, the craniosacral rhythm, in it out and in. It's a movement from the cerebral spinal fluid made in the choroid plexus of the brain. I don't want to get too technical here, but it's a pumping action deep inside the brain where the cerebral spinal fluid is a blood filtrate. So it's like a piece of cheesecloth where the blood passes by that, and then there's a filtrate that comes through, and that's the cerebral spinal fluid. So that's made deep in the brain. And then it spreads throughout the entire nervous system, and it turns out that research is showing that the cerebral spinal fluid doesn't just stay in the brain and the spinal column, but it spreads out throughout the entire lymphatic system of the body. The implications of that are huge, that our bodies are way more intelligent than we've ever thought, because the cerebral spinal fluid, which is the most biomagnetic material in the body, is flooding through the entire system. The lymphatic system touches every single cell of the body. It touches every organ of the body. It touches every cell of the body. It's the drainage system. It's the garbage system of the body. I say that sort of euphemistically because there's a whole lot more intelligence than just the garbage system. But there's a huge feedback loop from that system, which is telling the body where the hormones are, because it drains the old hormones out of the body. Some people, when you go through a rough menopause, it's because your lymphatics aren't running well, because you haven't drained old hormones out of the body, sending a feedback loop to the brain that says we need more hormones. Or, it's sort of simplistic, the feedback loop to the adrenals, feedback loop to every part of the body through the lymphatics. So how we can drain the brain is through breath, right? Through our breathing helps to drain the brain. The breath is a feedback loop with that pumping of the cerebral spinal fluid. There are many sutures in the skull. There are 27 bones in the skull, and they all have movement. With the cerebral spinal fluid movement, right? And it can go faster, it can go slower, depending on trauma in the body and how it's held. So these bones all have movement. I'm exaggerating it because when you put your hands on it, it's very subtle, but very definitive. And I can tell, and I teach other people to be able to feel where there's movement and where there isn't. And one of the big parts of draining the brain and getting their neurotoxins, and oh, by the way, amyloid plaque. That has been definitively, University of Virginia, and I think it's Science Magazine, is coming up with a lot of research on this. So the sagittal suture is the suture that runs on the top of your head. It's here, and what you want to have working is you want to have the actual skin on the top of your head moving. So you want to have this loosened up. And when you loosen this up, your brain can drain really well. So why don't you just put your fingers on the top of your skull, and just kind of feel right on the top, right? And you can sort of go back and forth and sideways and back and forth and sideways. And what it is the sutures are like tectonic plates. And when there's no movement, there's no movement. But you want there to be a little bit of movement. And sometimes you can feel like a real hard spot. And so you can just kind of pull that around, just kind of rotate on that and see. Sometimes it can feel a little tight, sometimes it feels loose, and you just kind of work that. And you know, like I do this for a living, so people come to me that have problems, right, and want their health to be better and maintain their health. So, but you can do it at home, just in the evening. You know, you're watching Netflix or something, or it's after dinner and you're watching the sunset. You know, you can just grab your skull a little bit and just, you know, work it a little bit. That sagittal suture, and there's actually a feedback loop that I've noticed that when I start working that in the comfort of my home, of course, not in a freezing cold room like here, all of a sudden, I want to take a deep breath. So I think there are more feedback loops in our body than we understand, and one of them I think is with the respiratory diaphragm. It's an automatic thing where when you open this suture up, you naturally want to breathe more deeply. There are lots of things about breath as well. John Duard is an Ayurvedic practitioner in Boulder, Colorado, and he's a high mountain athlete. So, you know, he's not just an Ayurvedic practitioner on some mountaintop somewhere. He's actually engaged in life, and he is very, very active. So what you want to be doing is breathing through your nose. Mouth breathing, as they say, is not good. And there's a reason for that, because inside your cranium, behind your nose, is a thing called the ethmoid process. And through here, through breathing through your nose, you create the turbinates of the brain. The air passes by the turbinates of the brain, and what happens is that you get nitric oxide. So whenever you breathe through your nose, you're getting extra nitric oxide, which helps the blood vessels expand, helps your entire body, helps your brain health, and helps the lymphatics, which are the lymphatic cells of the brain. So it helps the brain to clear out toxins, amyloid plaque, things that you don't want in your brain. So one of the ways of increasing your breath is to breathe deeply. But, you know, I was in the Apple store the other day, and I was getting a new computer, a new laptop, and you know, everybody's really friendly, and it's quite a lovely place to go. But this fellow pushed the wrong button on my computer, and everything was gone. 40 years of information was gone. It was like, you know, talk about not breathing. You know, I went across the alleyway and got some ice cream and chocolate, and, you know, I mean, you talk about, you know, gunking up my lymphatics. You know, it was not a good experience. And so finally they got to download, whatever, it was okay. But in the meantime, I had not been breathing, and my muscles in my respiratory diaphragm had gone into spasm. And you know, they don't unspasm all by themselves. You know, we have to breathe deeply to relax the whole system. And you know, a lot of us have, you know, years of holding our breath, you know, through professional school, through childhood, through, you know, having children, through different traumas. You know, we stop breathing. So the key is to start breathing on a regular basis with intention. You know, they talk about, Dave Asprey talks about breathing deeply every morning. He uses a respirator, but we're just normal people, so we don't have the respirators, but what we can do is breathe deeply every morning, and breathe really deeply and hold it in. he talks about this, John Dewar talks about sipping, where you breathe in and then let it out. And you're doing all of this through your nose. So you're getting more oxygen. When you hold it, it's being able to permeate through all the tissues of your body more deeply and more profoundly. So you get more relaxation. You get more oxygen to the tissues, which is antimicrobial. It's huge for being happy, really happy and healthy, which is what we want to do. Live, happy, healthy, and then whoop, okay, pass over, whatever. So, so the whole breathing thing is really great. He works with high mountain athletes and has found that by breathing through your nose, you're getting more oxygen to your tissues and you perform better as an athlete. And I think we're all athletes in our lives, we're all leaping tall buildings and performing admirably in our lives, just handling what we have to do every day. So, so this sagittal suture helps your breathing. The feedback loop to your respiratory diaphragm. So you just actually go inside and just feel the difference. And because they found that the cerebral spinal fluid runs through all the tissues of the body, you actually are getting an entire body feedback loop. It's pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable. So I have these books here, if you are interested. This is a book called The Brain Stars, and it's all about the glial cells in the brain, and it maps them out, shows different pictures. The cerebral spinal fluid flow and how it more in-depth pictures. And then I also have this book called The Anatomy of Breathing, and this shows everything in your body, the rib cage, what happens as you breathe in through the ethmoid process and through the cribriform plate of the brain, how the nitric oxide is made. There are muscles through all the ribs on the side of your body, so it's really nice to have your rib cage moving. There are also two muscles here on either side of your neck. The sternocleidomastoid, SCM muscles. So I want everyone to just kind of feel the side of your head. Yeah, there's a muscle here and a muscle here. And what happens is this muscle gets really tight, and it cuts off circulation, cuts off lymphatic drainage from the head into the body. And what it also does is it creates vagal stasis. The vagus nerve is the nerve that comes, there's a lot of talk about the vagal stimulation these days, the nerve that comes out in the back of the head and the side of the head, and it goes to all the organs of the body. So again, we want everything to stay open so the breath, so the movement can go through the whole body. We have flows in our body. We have cerebral spinal fluid flow, we have air flow, we have blood flow, we've got the lymphatic flow, we've just got all of this flow in our bodies, and we want to keep that open. There's another little factoid I'd like to share with you, and that is that our feet contain 25% of the bones in our body. 25% of the bones in our body. And this is Dave Asprey, again, the biohacker. He's talking about this. And so you want to keep your feet moving and flexible. All the feet, all the bones. Because with 25% of the bones, you have all the ligaments, all the tendons, all the nerves. The very nutrient-dense area. Dense feedback loops to the brain. So you want to keep that really open to get to keep good brain health. Any questions?